This is an important conversation because, one, we have few occasions on which we could get certain personalities in the same room. And in this one, we have Martino and Sangeeta both with us. And I do want to take just about a few minutes to deep dive into a particular aspect of the things that actually got picked out, Martino, from your keynote speech. I was very interested in all these dichotomies that you mentioned while you were talking about, this whole relationship between architecture and the cinematic. And any time that we talk about any kind of a relationship, there is this distance, which needs to be covered. It can be a long distance or a short distance. But especially within dichotomy, the beauty is in that space which exists between the two elements. So when we speak about love and hate, or we speak about peace and war, or we talk about the before and after of something, or we speak about the permanence or temporality of something, or when things are tactile or not tactile. These are not always opposites. There is this space between them. And so I thought that with the two of you, we could just kind of inspect that space a little bit. Starting with you, we all saw a little bit of glimpse of one aspect of work that you do. You have a huge legacy of the patronage and the philanthropic work that you do for the arts, crafts, architecture, heritage, all of that. I was actually very interested in understanding that when you're kind of trying to preserve heritage, you speak about doing it for the future generations. So there is always a before and after, there's a history and future. But when working on that particular project, have you ever had a chance to document or study the impact, the societal impact it has on people, when you kind of intervene into a project, and before that and the after of that?
Well, I think that, hello everyone, it's lovely to see all of you. So basically I think that documentation really is not needed. We live in a country with so many people, and we see all these wonderful buildings which has been done many, many years ago, and many of them are totally dilapidated. So everyone looks at them and say that we have to restore our wealth, our heritage. Our country is vast, and our country is very, very beautiful. And all of us try to do whatever they can. So as I say, intuition which is very important.
But I was very curious if there's something anecdotal that you can share about a project in which, let's say, when you went and you kind of interacted with the communities around or the people around, and the kind of relationship that they had with that piece of architecture or building which was in a state that needed some kind of a conservation. And then when you revisit, is there a difference that you're able to map? Is there a beautiful story that you would like to tell?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I have people here from New York. So there was Henry Kravis, who was one of the major venture capital fund in New York, and they called and they said to us that visiting India and they want to see the synagogue. And we didn't know where the synagogue was. And then a person went and saw it, and it was very dilapidated. And so, Mr. Kravis, knowing such a well-known personality in the Wall Street, I felt really ashamed. There's nothing I could do about it. And at that time, just opposite the synagogue, my daughter has a place there, and I was having coffee. And I looked around and I said, that is such a beautiful building, and why is it so bad? And why am I feeling so ashamed? So we jumped there. I went in, although I'm not a Jew. Went in and I said, sir, I wanted to meet the rabbi. And he was actually looking at me that, am I intruding? But when we met each other and we realized that we all have to work together to make our city so important.
Yeah. And the heritage
I don't want to feel so ashamed.
Right. And like you said, heritage work is a collective effort,
Absolutely.
to keep the heritage. Yeah, thank you. Martino, you said something really interesting, which probably I'll have a deeper conversation with you about it later, but which stood out to me is embodied spectatorship. You spoke about that, and you also explained its fundamental difference, in the cinematic and within the architecture. So the question I have for you is, you yourself as a curator, researcher, writer, who understands that difference and who also does that as work, but also experiences the space. So you're always sort of shuffling between the two roles. So when you're doing that embodied spectatorship as an actor, and then when you are doing it as a spectator, as a curator, because the work that you do at MoMA itself creates enough opportunities for such encounters with films, with what's on screen, but also with the architecture, and within, in a way, the spatial construct of how an exhibition is put out, how people experience a museum. So how do you switch between this actor-spectator sort of a position within yourself when you're experiencing or observing this embodied spectatorship?
I think, your question, thank you for that, touches very much the center of my curatorial practice. Anybody who curates architecture is, of course, confronted with the problem that as a curator of architecture, we can never actually present the building in a gallery. We can only ever deal with representations, photographs, films, and so on and so forth. And so I think, what you said, the actor versus the observer, I mean, I'm an actor in research. I very strongly believe that when I want to bring or present a building in one of my exhibitions, I have to go visit it, I have to experience it. It's much more than just seeing it on an Instagram post or in a photograph. I have to move through the space and I have to feel the space. It's this tactile notion that Benjamin was talking about. And then, of course, the challenge for an architecture curator is to convey a sense of this multi-sensory experience that I have in a building, in a gallery. And that's always a huge challenge. And that's why I think being a curator of architecture is more difficult than a curator of art, because you have always the aura of a painting or of a work of art that stands for itself, that speaks for itself. And so I'm a firm believer that film is as close as it gets to sort of conveying a sense of movement and tactility that an actual visit to a building affords, but supplemented with other media such as photographs, drawings, sketches, which, give a sense of the hand of the architect to the degree that architects still actually produce drawings, and of course architectural models.
But you also said something in your speech about how architecture itself is experienced as a distraction. And that was the difference that you were explaining. That, when you're probably watching films, you're concentrating. And when you concentrate on an artwork, which could also be a piece of film, you're sucked into it. You become part of that. But when you interact with something in a distracted, non-focused way, then you actually suck that thing into you. Could you expand on that a little bit?
I mean, that's sort of, Walter Benjamin's point, and of course he was, writing or thinking about this 100 years ago. The medium of film was very new, and so he was trying to articulate a way how film is really a completely different experience from looking at a painting. And so he was actually making the point that we don't necessarily see it that way today, but he was making the point that watching a film is also an experience of a distracted experience, in the sense that, as you were saying, the film sort of comes to you as opposed you go into the movie. And, I think one of the important aspects here is the notion of time, temporality, right? Even when we watch a movie in a concentrated fashion, we also, in our mind, start to, produce an image that is more than just the individual photos that are going through the screen. And montage, the theorem of montage, of cinematic montage, is exactly about that. How we create a mental image based on the individual images that are shown on the screen, and produce a narrative based on that. And moving through a space is very similar in that sense. We create a notion of a building through a multitude of individual impressions, be they tactile or optic, and we create a mental image. And so I think that's, the similarity.
Right. I'd like to add this, that I remember the time when Mr. Rahul Mehrotra, they did this architecture exhibition at the Maximula Bhavan, which was about the Kumbh Mela. And there were these Harvard graduates, architecture graduates, who did this whole exhibition of the Kumbh Mela. And I remember that, and I still remember that whole apparition as if I've been to the Kumbh.
Right. In fact, I was going to come to you from that conversation because I was thinking about the fact that when collectively experienced, architecture itself becomes like this enlivened artwork. You know, because there are so many people who are experiencing it, who are interacting with it. So it becomes like that canvas of expression, but also experience. And again, the previous question that I asked of you, the before and after of a dilapidated building, you know, which could have some kind of a value in the past. But when you bring that out again, I'm just trying to imagine the kind of experience you as a patron in that sense have when you see it being occupied again. When, you know, people, I mean, the restoration creates that access and that welcome for the people to interact with the building again. How do you feel about that? Is that ever like the end goal?
No, more than the patron, it's the people. It's a joy. And if you look at the SNDT college, which is in your Nana Chowk, it was so horrible. And now, because of our restorer, Mrs. Abha Lamba, it is stellar. The people have changed, the students have changed. It is the built environment.
Thank you. I know we don't have too much time, but I just have probably one more question. Since we just touched upon philanthropy and patronage, and I actually wanted to come to you with that, because again, there is this relationship between any museum and its patrons. And there is, again, that space and that tension. So from your experience as a curator, and then if you could also add to that, Sangeeta, after Martino, as a patron on the other side, how do you cover that distance between curatorial objectives and philanthropic ambitions when you're working?
That's a very politically charged question. I would actually like to hear. Look, I mean, I'm very lucky to work at an institution, the Museum of Modern Art, where we are blessed with an incredible, you know, group of trustees. One of them, Marie-Josée Kravis, Henry's wife, who is the chairwoman of our board. And, you know, I'm saying lucky because I'm talking about a group of enlightened people who really appreciate art and are willing to, you know, invest substantial resources in their shared beliefs, and while also understanding that they're not the curators, but they are here to support our work. And so I feel very blessed to work in such a setup. It's really a wonderful privilege, and it allows me to do exhibitions on the modern architecture of South Asia, or on Africa, or whatever, you know, I feel is relevant, or we curators feel relevant. So, and, you know, I want to, of course, also mention your incredible work in preservation, which really is absolutely remarkable. And the world needs more people like you, so thank you for that.
Thank you. A quick last one for you, Sangeeta. So the same question, but from the other side, because you're also supporting so many different institutions, initiatives, artists, you know, from individual to institution. There's so much that you support. You're on board of so many prestigious institutions as well. How do you choose that? How do you decide where to put in your patronage and philanthropic efforts?
I would like actually to salute to our GSW group. They make all the money. And they are the ones who work very hard. So because of them, they do well, and we get a small chunk. Knowing in our country, there are many things that have to be done. There's education, there's health, there's water, there's women empowerment. There are many, many things. So out of the lot, you choose that this is all that we can afford.
Yeah. And how do you
So that's what a patron does. So as I say that, I mean, the moon is there, the stars are there, but all of us have trust and intuition, and they do what they can.
Trust and intuition are, on that note, are the two things that this festival is built on as well. So thank you so much. Both Martino and Sangeeta will be around, so you'll get to talk to them after this. But thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your wisdom. Thank you.